Now y'all can hear me. Sorry. This morning is definitely the morning of troubleshooting. If anyone, I know that Grace and Sierra were trying to get into the chat. I don't expect anyone has their contact info or anything. I've sent them an invitation, but if you have their contact info, please let them know we've started. I got a message from Grace saying her and Sierra were in the chat, but I don't see them. It's not a hybrid class unless we figure something out at the top of the class. So anyway, I'm gonna start the class off with a video. I'm gonna start playing it real quick and make sure that everyone online can hear it and see it. So I'm gonna start it and then pause, make sure you are all good to go in viewing it, and then I'll restart it so everyone can see it. And we're not gonna have a replay of last week where it was just a AHA video on mute. So.
Writing's not that easy, but Grammarly can help. This sentence is...
So can y'all see, did y'all see an advertisement online? No. Okay.
I think you have to show that you're showing that page when you present.
Uh-huh. Okay, try this again. I am presenting. Okay. Can y'all see and hear this? Okay. Now I'm gonna start it over so we can all get the same. Our next topic is over line and movement. And this is a movie called Koyaanisqatsi. And this actually would have been good to show you for our last section, over balance, because Koyaanisqatsi means life out of balance. It's a film that was produced by Francis. I guess I'll stay in front of the film. You want to migrate to this table so you can see everything?
Yeah, sure.
I don't want to be just.
Yeah.
This film is one of my favorite movies ever, so I felt compelled to share it with you all. It was produced by Francis Coppola, the same guy who did Apocalypse Now. I think he's a big name director. He's done a few other classic movies, but the person who did the music is Philip Glass, and I'm just gonna let this 10 minutes speak for itself. So I'm gonna keep an eye on the chat. For any reason anyone online can't see or hear anything, I will correct it. Oh yeah, think line and movement for this.
Want to play?
It's not part of your education. Okay, it's part of a playlist. Yeah, the whole movie is like that. It's one of my favorite. It's it's essentially a critique on Western culture, on Western mass production, on reliance on resources, on using too many resources. This film was released in 1982, and so a lot of the things that this film is facing, we are facing today. Just more than 30 years, the problem more advanced. I think every artist should see this film. That's just me, but this film will be appropriate for a lot of things we do in this class, especially when we get into collage work. But today, I was going to introduce y'all to Line of Movement, that video, but we are also wrapping up balance, and I was going to show y'all I am jumbling up my thoughts and my words. I'm going to show y'all an example of the write out the 75 to 100 word description I wanted y'all to use for the NOTAM project, because next class we are going to critique them, and everyone is going to get 5 or 8 minutes thereabout to present their NOTAM and talk about it, and we'll all briefly critique it. It's going to be short and sweet, pretty easy. What's up?
I just have this on your second one. The way that you folded out that little kind of like L shape, not L shape, but
Right here?
the little arm, it's not, like, we don't have to make it a perfect reflection of the thing that we're just using the pieces.
If it's,
Because I love how it looks, and I didn't think.
it's not a perfect reflection.
It's just about balance. Like,
Yeah, try to, with your NOTAMs, try to construct it. Try to make your craft as sharp and pristine as you can. I understand that perfect's not possible, but just try and keep your craft really clean and neat. First project, you know, I'm not expecting the Mona Lisa or anything, but so I'll jump into it again. So these are just examples, just like you can mimic how I deliver this in yours if you're having trouble writing your statement for your balance project or your NOTAM. These compositions demonstrate symmetrical balance. Both compositions have several points at which they can be symmetrical. So across here, up and down, and the same for this one. Any direction, really, these will be symmetrical. The crisp shapes and their interaction within the space is influenced by the hard build of a machine or mechanical process. So this shape for me, like we just watched that video of the car factory, this shape to me represents, or not represents, but kind of mimics a mechanical arm or a process. The left composition plays with depth and appears to be in the foreground and the background. This one, this is like, it closer to you, this is further away, and it kind of has that in between. The right composition looks as though it is an interface on a module or a piece of alien architecture, like the same as your key. I see it as like a keyboard, but you know, maybe on an alien craft or something that's foreign, you know. And these are my asymmetrical that I did last week. These two compositions demonstrate asymmetrical balance. My approach to these two examples was automatic. Automatic meaning that I just did them straight up in class, like just on the spot. These were my first, this was my introduction to NOTAM. Sitting down and showing you all this. Work on the left is fluid and uses soft, more natural shapes, while the work on the right is sharp and aesthetically reads as something that's aerodynamic. I realized this shape could not fly through the air very easily, but it's got these triangles kind of mimic like an airplane logo or a wing or something like that. The contrast between the two, I'm a huge sucker for contrast. These two examples are the most different of the three pairs that I made. These two compositions are the most different between, I just said that, duh. Essentially what I want y'all to do with these descriptors is just get used to talking about your work. Because this is just black and white paper cut and glued together. It's, you know, you will go on to make much more complicated and much more in-depth projects in your careers or tenures as artists, or your pursuits, that's a better word. But I just want you to get used to talking about it. It doesn't have to be so, you know, stringent. This is symmetrical and here is why'd you make it? It can just flow, you know, say what you want to say about it. There's really no wrong way to talk about your work. There is just getting better and better at it. So these are my radial balances. These two compositions demonstrate radial symmetry. Not only are both designs radial, but they are symmetrical at several points. Pretty much any point, these will be symmetrical. The left design displays movement and looks as though parts of it are turning. Oh, these are switched. I'm sorry, that should be the right design. So all the different gears in this look like they're rotating as if they were in a clock. And this design is reminiscent of a target or crosshairs. I spelled crosshairs wrong. Both compositions were made by establishing a circle in the middle and working outward. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say y'all have a pretty good grasp on this project. Yeah? Yeah, like project one, pretty easy. Yeah. The projects will get more involved. And if this project seemed kind of boring, they will get more enjoyable, I hope. Everyone online following along so far? Yes, thank you, Francis. Yes. Okay, so just to recap, in 2 days, we are going to critique this, so I want everyone to have your project one turned into the Google Drive. Was everyone able to access that? Go ahead.
I wasn't able to. I finished everything and
Okay.
had pictures and stuff, but I wasn't. I don't know why I was not.
Okay. Ryan, can you hear me?
Can I?
Say again?
Can I?
Okay. And Emily, you hadn't received a grayscale pad. I have those in my studio. And we'll break here at some point in class, and it's on campus. I'll run and get it. I have one for you that they were assigned from the school. And on that note, the supplies should be available at Wortman's. I've been telling y'all that for 2 weeks now, and I'm sorry it's been such a mess. I'm sorry this class has been such a mess starting out. I don't have a very good excuse other than it's just COVID. It sucks. It has made everything in disarray. If you, everyone online, if you have faced, and everyone in class too, if you all have faced problems with project one because of not having the grayscale, Emily, I'll have yours today, but use what supplies you can. I'm not going to penalize you for not having the supplies because everything's been weird and all over the place. Keep in contact with me, email me, and we'll get it all figured out. It's going to happen. This is going to be y'all's first critique on Wednesday, and it's going to be fun. I think you will find that critiques can be very enjoyable. Okay, so I'm going to jump into elements of line and movement. Line is an element of design. I just dug up this PowerPoint from all the files in the 2D class, so I was overjoyed to find I didn't have to build a PowerPoint from scratch. Line is an element of design, and rhythm is a principle of organization. They go hand in hand. Line is one of the simplest, most versatile elements of design. It may be defined as a point in motion, illustrated like so. A series of adjacent points, like a perforated line. Connection between points, like from point A to point B, and an implied connection, like whenever you point at something. The inherent dynamism of line is embodied in the first definition, point in motion. The second definition is a series of adjacent points. 3 is a connection between points, and 4 is an implied connection between points. Lighter, more fluid than any of the other visual elements, line can add a special energy to a design. Simply by drawing a line, we can activate a space, define a shape, or create a compositional bridge. Y'all grasp the concept of a line, right? I'm kind of spoon feeding this to you, but you get it. It's a line. It's everywhere. Any animation that you've ever watched. Sorry, I thought you said something. We're going to be, I'm pretty sure you all understand it pretty well. We're just going to be diving into it more in the next couple of weeks. Lines can be used to measure. They can be used to add weight. Give off a direction, orientation, degrees of continuity, character. Line weight is how wide the line is, how thick or thin it can be. Measure the length of a line, how long or short a line is. Longer lines have more energy. Straight is rectilinear. Curved is curvilinear. Any combination of curved or straight lines. I'm sorry, I went off on that, jumped into that thought without having a landing. I should have deleted that third one. Kind of a bare PowerPoint. Line can go left or right, up or down, no duh. Line orientation. Horizontal is means stable. Vertical means stable in movement because of gravity. Things fall down, so a vertical line has all that energy going down. And diagonal is reminiscent of conflict and movement. Degrees of continuity, how a series of points connect to create a line. This is super basic stuff. Line character, influenced by the medium. Smooth, rough, textural. I think you grasp by now. Lines have a lot of say and weight in a visual composition. Broken lines, visually connected together. I didn't write that. Closure is a visual connection even when lines are implied.
I always see what they did there.
Yeah.
That took me a while.
In review, line is an element of design. Lines are points in motion. Line has the following characteristics: measure, weight, type, direction, orientation, degrees of continuity, and character. Combination between the different characteristics adds content to the lines. Energy, playfulness, calm, anger, conflict, etc. You can say a lot with just one line. And it's what you say and how you say it, and that's no different with the line. Implied lines create visual connections. And I am now going to show you all some artists who use a lot of heavy line and movement in their work. Now, some of this work is still, but in the composition of the piece, I think there's a lot of movement. Caleb Schaub. Everyone online still following along? I'm about to play another video. Excellent. I'm gonna check something real quick. Well, I guess I'll check it while I play the video, so here you go.
He's the one that does the bike wheel, right?
Say by what?
He's the one that does like the spinning bike wheel.
I think it's on a spinning platform
Yeah, he does it, he cranks it with like a bike wheel, he has a mullet, really great hair.
You're saying he has a mullet? Is that what you said, this
Yeah.
artist?
He's
I know a lot of people do this, but this is just one I found that wasn't a huge video. Honestly, this is a great example for line and movement. I hate these kind of paintings. And that's, I mean, great that he can sell these for $50,000. That's great. I wish I could pay for my college education in one messy painting. But my opinions on this painting aside, these are great demonstrations of light. And don't be discouraged by trying things. I just think they're easy. It's cool, but it's neat. But like, yeah, what do you? It's not like a painting needs to say something and be philosophical and be, you know, really heavy-minded. But it's just, it's easy. I'm torn. I wish I'd have thought of that, but also like I like the artwork I do. So I'm too what's the word? I'm too I guess uptight as a person to enjoy a style like this. But that's Kalen Shaw. He's a Canadian painter. Does pretty well for himself in his messy paintings. Now we're gonna take a look at some kinetic sculptures. In these videos, I'm just trying to get some creative juices flowing for this next project. Because line and movement, especially movement, is kind of a tricky subject for class being in person and being online. I know you said you did your project and you brought it. I am not going to be taking any physical work, which kind of makes, well, it makes movement and line either way easier or way more difficult to talk about. But this video is about kinetic sculptures, and you're not going to be doing a sculpture, but how artists who work in a 3D space use movement to continue their artistic practice just after this ad. No, not in this class. I was about to say, well, maybe, but it's 2D design or foundation, so not yet.
videos, I didn't want to put my job.
Yeah.
Moving to a mountain.
Yeah, and just, yeah, you see,
She's like, I'm thinking.
you see work like this, and what am I even doing? So what y'all think so far? Any questions thus far? Any suggestions, comments? Just, we're gonna jump into line and movement, next week. And I think with this next project, there's going to be two parts to it. The first part, it hasn't been published online yet, but I'll basically have y'all take a sheet of paper and divide it up into 9 segments. And there's 9 prompts I'm gonna give you, and y'all are just going to, as best you can with line and abstract thought, draw that sound or what that sound looks like to you. And it's a good exercise. I think it's a good exercise. I've never done it, but I think it ought to be a good exercise. And then from there, we will choose one and push it further. I will definitely go over that again. If it's one in one ear, out the other, that's okay for now. About that project, I will go over it more in depth. So, what's next? Okay, I am going to call a break right now. I'm gonna run to my studio and get that grayscale for you. So y'all want to continue class at 9:15, 13 minutes? Okay, sounds good to me. Okay. Emily, I will return.
At college, saving money by customizing car insurance with Liberty Mutual.
Save money instead.
I'm gonna let Chuma get back and then I will begin again. Is that Procreate? That program?
Yeah.
Is that pretty intuitive?
It is.
It is? I've been thinking, because I've got my laptop that is, it's PC, and it's a flip screen, and it can do that. It's a little clunky though. And I've been thinking of getting a pad just for Procreate. Like, is that an Apple product
Yeah.
specifically for, is that just a regular pad with Procreate on it?
This iPad.
Huh?
This is the iPad with a Procreate.
Oh, okay, so it's the product.
Yeah,
is-
I don't know if they, you said you got a laptop? I didn't know they had like, I thought it was just for phones and tablets.
Yeah, my roommate has one of those, and I've been feeling like I'm missing out on
Yeah.
the design work.
We'll try it.
No, thank you. Hey. Everyone online hanging in there? I know that class can be hard to follow along with sometimes. There's a real disconnect between in person and online. And again, if you have any questions or need to comment or anything, just jump in, let me know. Okay, y'all, I'm gonna show y'all a really awesome large scale work called Book from the Sky. The artist's name is Judy, and how do I preface this work? It's a still work, but or it's a static piece, but it's not to say it's not without line or movement, or that those two qualities are not involved, even though it is a still installation. So here it is.
I'm in the Metropolitan Museum of Art with Allison Young. We're in an installation by the Chinese artist Xu Bing called Book from the Sky. Chinese characters are above us, they're below us, and they're on either side of us.
Pages containing columns and columns of Chinese text are surrounding us on the walls, hanging from the ceiling, and also on the floor in open book pages from volumes that he has hand-bound in the form of traditional Chinese book arts.
So on either side of this gallery are thousands of Chinese characters printed on this beautiful paper. Below us, a sea of waves made up of open books, and above us, a beautiful billowing sky. 3 long pieces of paper, scroll-like, stretched across the ceiling, filled with Chinese characters.
To Western viewers, it's not immediately clear what the text says, what this piece might be about, and it reminds me of other works around the Chinese art galleries in the Metropolitan Museum of more historical calligraphic arts.
But to a Chinese viewer, the meaning is also elusive.
This is because Xu Bing has actually invented over 1,000 new characters.
So these are not real characters.
Because traditional Chinese characters are composed in a modular way, meaning different components are brought together to form a character in a block form, Xu Bing actually uses some real components and some that are invented in combinations that are entirely new to create a character that looks extremely familiar to somebody who can read Chinese.
So we're surrounded by literally tens of thousands of Chinese characters that don't actually mean anything.
Xu actually discarded any characters that he came up with that looked too inauthentic.
Xu Bing didn't render all of these characters with a brush by hand, rather he carved wooden blocks, harking back to the ancient Chinese system of movable type, which is far older than Gutenberg's system in the West.
We're looking at a very early form of mass production that relates to the contemporary moment, in which print media have played a large role in Xu Bing's upbringing.
He was a young man during the Cultural Revolution, a period when intellectuals were vilified, when the very notion of the individual was distrusted, when everything was about the group, everything was about the state.
Xu Bing was actually very talented as a child in writing and in calligraphy. The skill was identified by teachers and harnessed in service of the state. So like many other young intellectuals, he was sent to the countryside where he was put to work creating banners by hand for things like holidays, weddings, and funerals, where he would be asked to combine modern and traditional forms of calligraphy.
And when Xu Bing was in art school, he was trained in the arts of propaganda, as was expected of anybody involved in the arts at this time in China. So it's fascinating, with that in mind, to look at this overwhelming display of block printing that admits no actual word.
The piece also makes me think of a lot of other works of contemporary Chinese art which use the act of destruction in order to create new meaning by way of dropping a Han Dynasty urn. Other artists repeating a text in layers that eventually obliterate its meaning.
So we can't locate meaning in what we read. So where do we look for meaning? We're asked to move from the symbolic representation of the words to the characters themselves and the accumulation of those characters.
As well as the vehicle through which they're delivered. So we're reminded of the way that text is used for propaganda purposes during Mao's regime and the inundation of posters and banners that would have surrounded him, just like these texts surround us here.
But the irony is that this was produced not during Mao's lifetime, but in a period after, when China was flooded with Western literature, and yet the artist has nevertheless created characters that are empty of meaning.
He has observed two phases of the consumption of texts in his lifetime. The first being from the regime through the use of propaganda, and the second when China opened up to receiving and translating Western philosophy, theory, literature, and art history. This was consumed by youths who were hungry for information.
I'm struck by the way the books on the floor create a series of waves that almost seem like the sea, and the banners that hang from the ceiling function very much as the sky. The title of this is Book from the Sky, and the panels on the walls seem like landscapes.
This is an interesting observation in light of the medium that we're looking at, now considered woodblock printed text to be one of the most non-elitist forms of art and communication because it was direct and because it could be mass-produced and widely disseminated. Whereas sculpture painting earlier in Chinese history often depicted the landscape and the natural environment, but very subtle political messages were sometimes conveyed in these compositions, and these were a more elitist form of art.
So here we have subtle references to landscape, but represented through text emptied of meaning.
So yeah, let me pull up a photo of it. You ever get on Google and type in Google out of habit?
Yes.
I just did that. So Book from the Sky is more than just about line or movement. You know, the reasons that we are looking at it in this class today. It's about language, and it's about propaganda and the different regimes of China rising and falling, and that's effect on language and communication. And all of this text, if you didn't catch it in the video, nonsense. All characters that don't mean anything, so he completely obliterates the meaning. But just from the aesthetic, why I bring this up, just from the aesthetic point of view, it's just rife with rhythm and movement. The ground, what does that mean to you? What does this look like to you? The way
The waves.
Yes. It's called Book in the Sky. So this is tablets. I guess I should do this on the computer. This is called Book in the Sky, and it's on the lecture. Or it'll, if you look back on the video, you'll see it.
Really sweet.
It's very I almost said landscaptural. But it mimics a landscape. Like this is the waves, sky, and this is the landscape. And all of these typefaces are gibberish. They don't mean anything. And this is a much more political piece, but I brought it up because it demonstrates heavy line and movement, the way it drapes from the ceiling. This is one of these pieces. This is like a bucket list art piece for me. You know, like artists can make a pilgrimage to go see the Mona Lisa, go stand in line for something that's this big. But I would love to see this work because it's so encompassing, involved. So moving on. This artist, maybe you've heard of him, the Explosion Artist.
Marionetting. There's so many hidden.
These next two artists I show y'all are a little more abstract to the point of line and movement, but those are qualities in their work, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. I'm not showing you this code.
我要它主要是在我的光底下破坏然后这个用这种要扫扫扫点点点，是我刚开始用要做的事，还在故乡的时候，我觉得做这个鞭炮这样子，对我来说有一点点很亲切，而且是特别明显。然后这个不要求是这个材料也是自然，因为它基本上有矿物质，所以不要它本身就是活的话，就是最早是在治疗上用的，是治疗。现在火药上面的很多用的材料，像这种它是用硝化，它还是一种药品，它主要是在消炎解毒上有功能。所以在跟火药同用，在它绘画的时候，它既是一种跟自然的对话和接触，因为它是一个自然的材料，同时它也是一种跟生命的一种接触。首先要用火药从1000多年前它就到对，然后你可以火药啊，在这边扫啊，这样做，这边扫多一点，这边少一点，这样放一条线路，你就跟你这个火药还跟你这张床单在对话，你像在调情。但是它就错了， 这就是跟你很近，所以这是路亚程度很近，所以是一个很身体性的，很身体性的。所以那个现在我们在为什么？那么就是因为它可能在出造型，可能在空中出造型，爆炸的变异，物理变异是从中心向外喷射，所以任何烟火的是它们结果它这个的话，你比如说要测评，所以你要让它变成一个小你就需要32个大在一个点上，用这些蛋组成一条线，画一条路。那么这就需要高科技。一种是首先光是要用电脑，电脑才可以让那个什么机器、什么蛋，它什么时候应该走。这个都要实现是。以前都是用导火线电，这个它不可以像电脑。这些是引进的电脑，是。所以当我们的空域的告诉他，他应该走这个里面的晶片有两个功能，第一告诉你应该点什么，你应该把我发射，所以他就首先点我要就把它打进去，然后这个晶片还第二个指令，就它离开它多久，但是呢，它有它的不一样。那就什么事情你都已经提前装在电脑上，你只是在等待那个瞬间出来。在外面做它的零件，其实很多人看，然后很多人帮助，用各种各样的技术把这个巨大的事情做出来。这样你就像在一个城市，就像大疆，那有几十万、上百万的民众在这个路上走过去，这个东西就是使你可能你是在做一场运动，做一场革命，是一个发生在社会城市上的事件。
So what kind of movement is at play? What are the different aspects of movement we have going on in the explosion paintings? Say again, I can't really hear you.
When you're talking about movement, what are you specifically talking about? Like the way they set up the fireworks, the way he set up his project?
It's the whole gambit of movement. There's a lot of movement in the gestural nature of making it, how just on his 2D still work, there's a lot of movement in how he sets things up, how it's a very handmade project, and the team of people, like a hive of people that work on these things. I also think there's movement in how the footprints are walking across the sky and just the nature of a firework, and there's movement in the spontaneity of it, the fleeting moment of when it's gone, and part of the art is just how it lives rent free in your mind. What else?
I said it was really visible, so I'm thinking like texture-wise, because they didn't have a lot of, it's kind of like you can touch it, you can feel all types of different traits.
Yeah, the graininess of the gunpowder and how the canvas after he ignites the gunpowder, maybe coarse.
Yeah.
So there's more to movement than just, literal movement. And I want y'all to think outside the box of that. And I'm gonna show you one more artist. You've probably heard this is an artist. All the artists I show you, I try to show you artists that are big or more revered or well-known in the art world, and I try to narrow it down to local artists or art happenings that were here in DFW. And this artist, maybe you've heard of him, Frank Stella. I went to this exhibit. This was at the Fort Worth Museum. And check it out.
We're showing work, a retrospective here that came right from the Whitney Museum of American Art in their new home, designed by Renzo Piano. And this is now we're in Fort Worth, and this is my second show in Fort Worth.
Well, it's a 60-year retrospective, which in itself is really unusual. I've only seen, to my memory, 2 60-year retrospectives, one by William de Kooning and this one by Frank Stella. It's unusual to be able to see that much of a career in one place. Having said that, it's really difficult to try to condense that length of a career down into a presentation that shows all the twists and turns. But it begins in 1958. Right after Frank graduated from Princeton and moved to New York in the Soho area. And it goes up to pretty much the present, 2012, 2014. At the dinner during the exhibition, I told the story that I went to Frank and said, it has been 3 decades since you have had a retrospective, and wouldn't it be great to do one that was on the East Coast in Texas and then on the West Coast? And he said, I don't think so. It's a lot of work. And I took that, of course, to mean, yes, Michael, you should go right ahead and do that retrospective. And I did. And he hasn't said no. So at the dinner, I said, the fact that you're here tonight, Frank, is encouraging to me.
I feel bad to say it or something, or I don't understand. But just off the top of my head, I like it better here than what I thought, than what it was before. So maybe I'm optimistic about myself and about the work.
Well, Frank's black paintings were in a very famous show at the Museum of Modern Art called 16 Americans. And it was a show that MoMA did to take account of the importance of some of the best artists in America at the time. Frank was 22 years old. He was in a show with Jasper Johns, Robert Rauschenberg, Ellsworth Kelly, Louise Nevelson, Richard Diebenkorn. I mean, older artists. And here was this young guy with these black paintings, these seemingly very monotonous, dull black paintings. So that was a bit of a sensation. And then MoMA bought one of the black paintings. That was amazing. 22-year-old in the collection of MoMA. Well, he was with the copper, aluminum, and the black enamel paint. He would literally go to the hardware store and say, "What can't you sell?" And the guy would go, "On that table, right over there." And Frank would say, "Well, how much do you want for it?" He'd say, "Well, what will you give me?" And Frank would give him as little as he could possibly give him. So the paint was cheap. It was industrial paint. But, he makes it sound like it was almost Duchampian, a found object. But in this case, found paint.
There are a couple of...
Are y'all familiar with Duchamp? Okay. I'll tell you after this video, but if you continue on into the arts, you will hear that name a lot, Duchamp. And I'll enlighten you to him after this video.
reason, but the most obvious reason is it's easier, and it's cheaper. So you don't have to get involved with artist colors and artist tools, which are kind of expensive. And particularly if you want to have a work on large pieces. So it was pretty, it was kind of natural, and it just seemed to work for me.
Warhol sees what Frank's doing, and Warhol, in a couple of his books, acknowledged Frank very early on for his use of series, to take an image and then develop it in a series, either through variations in color, or variations in size, or variations in the form. So Frank was very influential on pop art, and of course was also considered one of the many people of the op art movement, which is the opticality, what color does, because Frank was using colors that were very aggressive. He was one of the first to use fluorescent and day glow paints. I mean, that seems so long ago, but he was there.
The best thing about being the father of minimalism was I wasn't the first father. Barnett Neiman was the first father of minimalism, and when he was asked about being the father of minimalism, he said, well, who's the mother? I might say, who's the mother of maximalism?
At the end of the day, in this exhibition, there's an early minimalist painting next to a very, very light, sort of surrealist looking thing. And when I brought Frank in to look at it and showed him that I put them next to each other, it was amazing, Michael, that when I made that painting in 1958, I had no idea what kind of a painter I would be. And there's no way I could ever guess that I would make that painting.
What I liked about Caravaggio is that people were so happy that it was so real looking. And so then all of the emphasis was on the idea that Caravaggio had this skill and developed this technique to make images on a flat surface look real. And I saw a painting in, I think, the Capitoline Museum on the back, and it looked real to me. And I thought, well, that's great. I can see why everybody loves that. It looks really real. But I didn't care that much about the illusion, how the illusion was real. It was real to me in the sense that he wanted it to be, the effort that went into it was painting, and he painted in a way and made the effort to make the effort, reality was in the pictorial effort to express the image. And so how real it looked wasn't the reality that I was looking at. The reality I was looking at was the reality of being so involved in picturing something, making a picture.
Frank's work has always been about making painting very material and giving painting a presence in space.
Real quick, this is his later work. His earlier work were those really rigid, concentrated, bold lines and color, simple, or they're not simple, but they're kind of like Insta paintings in that they look like what they are. And what I mean by that is it's a painting of of bold line and color. And that's kind of what it's about. It's big and it's about line and color. And these are his later paintings. And so you see, not only do his paintings have a lot, or his sculptures have a lot more movement to them now inherently, but the movement in his work has gone from big, bold, blocky forms of color to more fluid, natural shapes. And also in his work, there's movement in the process of a painting, and how you can imagine that work was made. And so just keep in mind, these are his later works where these compared to his first works look like he kind of went off the rails.
Case that it had never happened.
But he's still the man.
He probably will transform to something else. he's constantly changing. That's what makes Frank Stella Frank Stella. I mean, Frank Stella is always fighting against himself.
Movement is
You know,
change.
he sets up these systems, he sets up these way of working, and then exhausts them, picks up the pieces, and makes up a new thing.
Movement is change, y'all. All right. I'm going to show y'all what he meant. We're almost done. I'm going to show y'all what he meant by Duchampian. And then I will answer any questions y'all have concerning Project One or help y'all with any concerns that y'all have. And then we can get out of here until critique on Wednesday.
Did you notice he's missing a finger?
Say again?
Did you notice he's missing a finger?
I didn't, but looking at those sculptures, I can imagine why. So Marcel Duchamp.
His work, the circular work, looks like Sonia Delaunay. That's what
Looks like what?
Sonia Delaunay, you know,
You write that down.
sure, it looks like she was in the 40s. She was like the mother of Cubism, I think.
Marcel Duchamp, his most famous, I'm going to show you his two most famous works. This is his urinal.
Oh, yes.
And the big wow about a urinal is he was challenging this idea that art doesn't need to be in a gallery to be considered high art. What is art? Well, who gets to decide what is valuable or what is artistic or what holds artistic merit? And so he introduced this idea of quote unquote the ready-made, and this is a ready-made art. There are several reproductions of this, so you can and likely will see Duchamp's urinal, and he's got, I forget what R-mut on the side means, but
Did he get that from the museum that he was showing at?
maybe. I think so the lore goes, or so the history goes. And just the idea of a ready-made, that you can take an item out of its context, take it out, and put it, let's call this the gallery over here on this desk, put it into the gallery, and now it's transformed into something else. And he's a great artist. And not all of his works rely on such simple and kind of archaic means of production. But when that was in the 20s, that was, or 20s or 30s, whenever, that's when he was alive. The urinal he did that in the 20s. And I mean, before the internet, that's a pretty big idea. Movement. This work, I guess the movement in this is he relocates, it's a ready-made, and he relocates the urinal. He moves the context. Does that make sense? You guys?
He's like breaking the barriers of what people set apart.
Just because you put that in a gallery, it's all of a sudden art.
No.
It's subjective. He did it, and believe me, you will see this again in your studies in art.
Did he also do the crucifix and the jar of peach?
That is called, no, that's a photographer, I don't remember the photographer's name. It's called Piss Christ.
Is that a beard?
Yeah, someone drew that on here. So real quick, this urinal right here, this is one of his famous works. They took the urinal out of a bathroom and put it in a gallery, and voila, it's art. And the idea here is the quote unquote, guys, I'm just reviewing real quick. The idea is the ready-made. And the idea of, he moved the context. He removed the context, took it out of the bathroom and put it into a gallery, and was challenging everyone's ideas of art. Like, okay, so what? It's in a gallery now, that makes it art? And he's kind of right. This other one is, it's nude descending or nude ascending staircase. Here it is. It's nude descending staircase. So can y'all point out the movement here? Yeah, it's not a trick question. It's just the composition of it. It's called New Descending Staircase, and you wouldn't guess that looking at it without the title, but then the title, just the walking down a staircase, it doesn't even really look like that. But he puts that idea in your head, and so your connotation of New Descending Staircase kind of gets glued to that.
I don't like the idea of someone plans ideas for me to know.
I'll take care of it. We've got a wasp in the room.
Oh.
It's January. It's way too early. But so what he meant what he meant by Duchampian was Frank Stella went into a shop and said, "What can't you sell? This thing, or let me find a thing. You can't sell me this thing? Okay, what will you take for it?" And then he buys it, and then it's ready-made because he took it and he took an item that was not that is not a material typically used in art, or he took something outside of what we know as the art realm and made work out of it. So that's what ready-made means. And you won't be quizzed on this, but that's cool on the spot art history that you will learn again, and someone much more eloquent than I will, or someone will explain that much more eloquently than I just did. So that's my presentation for today. Oh, thank you, Francis. I'm sorry, I caught on to that wrong. Francis said the direction of the lines forming that figure makes it look like it is moving. Variety of lines in all different directions makes it look like it is moving. That is correct. He took an abstracted, that would be abstracted. It started as the idea of a new descending staircase, and he kind of just obliterated it into all its movements and gave us that connotation, and you, in your own head, apply movement and ideas and images to it. Thank you, Francis. So the rest of the class, you guys are free to go if you'd like. I am here, everyone online too, I'm here to answer questions or look at what you got so far, or just any and everything regarding Project One. I'm gonna hang around for a few minutes and talk about. I'll have this lecture online if you missed any part of it. And y'all have a nice Monday. Email me. Again, if any questions or anything, pay attention to Canvas. I did upload last class's lecture on the announcements. And I don't think there's anything else. Y'all have any questions?
Yeah, I have 2 questions.
Okay.
The first one, I remember you saying that we didn't have to do black, it just had to be a high contrast color.
Uh-huh.
Can I use like the 3 primary colors to kind of speak to the
Okay.
thing that I'm saying?
That's a good question regarding Project One.
You can say no.
Well,
Like,
are you able to use the grayscale?
I mean, yeah, just I
Keep
can
it,
speak to that.
then-
like, this one.
Well, it's keeping it open because one of your classmates is unable to use this, and so I'm letting her use what materials she can. And so it is problematic for me to give one student freedom in the assignment. Francis, yeah, you can use the grayscale. Use the grayscale if you can.
Okay.
Y'all, if y'all have to use other materials, if you don't have your grayscale, if you're unable to get it, I've got the box right here. If anyone that didn't get one, email me. I will find a way to get you your grayscale book. If you're in this class, one of these is yours. To answer your question, yes, use the grayscale. If you can't and you have to rely on other materials, that's completely fine. email me and we'll work it out. That is Francis, that is completely fine. And what was your second question?
So my second question is a little bit broader. With the concept ready-made, being that, like, was it considered ready-made because it was breaking it was like breaking barriers in that time period? Because now, if you were to do it, like, what would that concept be?
What would it be nowadays?
Yeah, being that so much has already been done, is there a way to still have like a ready-made kind of thing? You know, in my head, it's almost like if you took a painting and took it out of the context of the gallery and maybe had it in a public space, then it's keeping that concept alive.
I think ready-mades play, this is another of Duchamp's ready-made where he just mounted a wheel to a chair.
Like, that's been done so much, there's no shock value to it anymore, right?
Yeah, first used, describe works of art he made from manufactured objects. So it's by definition, this is the end of class, y'all are free to go. And for anyone that is interested in the concept of ready-made, it'll be at the end of this lecture if you want to see it later.
Alright.
And yeah, I'll stop with you. I'll look at your stuff after class if you need.
Okay, and the Google Drive, just.
Yes, yes. Anyone that is having, is anyone still online? Anyone that is having trouble with the Google Drive, hang around for just a second. I'm gonna answer this ready-made question and make sure everyone is up to speed on the Google Drive so you can turn your stuff in. The ready-made, it's mostly things that were manufactured, but it's relying on removal and reappropriation of context. So taking this,
I understand that part.
yeah. And so what would it be in the art world now?
Like, and it's just a subjective question, you know. I'm just curious because I think we are desensitized to that concept now. You know, in 2020, if someone does that, it's like, oh, okay, I've seen it before. But, like, I guess personally as an artist, if I wanted to have a piece in that way, it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't carry the same weight, you know. So I would think the reverse would be if you take a great piece of artwork and you put it in a dumpster, because you're removing it from the context, you know.
I'm trying to find an artist. I think there's an artist who could answer that, who would answer that question really well. What he does is, and I'll find his name. There's an artist, he's a contemporary artist, but he goes into museums and he takes their items that they have just stored in the back and he reappropriates them. And so one thing that he did, it's a lot of museums of like, it's all over the place, but I mean, for instance, he'll go into a museum about their Victorian era art or art around from a couple hundred years ago, from the 1700s and 1800s. But he'll take two items that have a similarity, and one of them, I'm butchering it.
No, you can.
He will juxtapose items like bondages that the slaves wore, or things made by the slaves or worn by the slaves, and he'll juxtaposition them next to things like a chair that's made from iron, made from that same material, or the chairs in the room that the plantation owners would sit in. And so he takes items in the museum already and examines their economic, what their social context was at the time. And a lot of it kind of demonstrates dynamics of power. And now, I mean, I will find this artist name for you because museums let him come in and like get their stuff in the back and then his medium is the museum itself. And it's like the most brilliant budget it's the most brilliant money-saving way to be an artist, but it's also in Duchamp's ready-made. It's just like,
It's already been created.
Yeah.
Changing the context to create a dialogue.
And at the time, Marcel Duchamp, that was kind of radical, just because people knew in the 20s, you know, like we have the internet now. If we want to find it out, there it is. And back then, you know, thought just traveled slower. I'll find that artist. And is anyone online having trouble accessing their Google Drive so as to turn in Project One on Wednesday? Anyone who's not having any issue, okay, anyone who's able to access it, you're free to go. I'm gonna stay after and address any questions you have of Project One, or if anyone is having trouble accessing the Google Drive. Other than that, you're free to go. I'm gonna stop recording.